Welcome to the Family Law Growth Podcast. We interview the nation's fastest growing family law firms to get insights on what is working today. We leave no stone unturned, from intake to the biggest mistakes they've made while scaling to multi-7 figures and 8 figures. I'm your host, Elliot, co-founder of Empirical 360. Let's dive into the episode. All right, so welcome back to the Family Law Growth Podcast. I am pumped about today's episode because everybody is talking about acquisitions and MSOs and sell my law firm. And today, I think all of the myths are going to be put away because we are joined by Victoria Collier from Quid Pro Quo Law. So thank you for being on the episode, Victoria. We're really looking forward to this.
Thank you.
So I feel like you should know Victoria because I've seen her name for years now. But if our listeners don't know who you are, what do you do for the law firm community?
So through Quid Pro Quo, we provide valuations of law firms. We provide coaching. So if you don't get the value that you think your firm is worth, then we can help you increase that value. And then we certainly act as advisor for acquisitions and selling law firms. And so the majority of people hire us and we find a buyer for them.
That is I already have millions of questions. I'm sure the audience does too. So primarily, do you see it a lot of full cycle? You come in as an evaluation person, you then do some coaching, and then you help with the sale. So you kind of see the full spectrum typically?
I would say that the valuation is the foundational piece. And so after someone has received a valuation, then they have two paths. Either stay in my firm and continue to build it up and get where we want to go. So many people actually get valuations when they don't intend to sell at all. They just want to know, where am I, so they can set a target and then fill the gap. That's one road. The other road is, I got the valuation, I want out. How can you get me out as soon as possible? And that's the selling route. So the first one would be coaching. The second one would be selling.
Okay, so the first one is like they're in a great place and they want to be better. The second one is I'm in pain and I want to get the heck out of here.
Correct.
Gotcha.
I do want to distinguish, though, our coaching is different than what you would see out there from other businesses that coach lawyers to build or scale, increase revenue, increase team. All of our coaching is designed to do one thing, and that's to increase your value so that you can exit when you want to at the value you want to.
So what would you say the difference is then there between your traditional business coaching / law firm coaching, right? The groups that we know out there versus what you're doing? Are you attacking different things? Are you attacking things in a ranked order? What does that look like?
It wouldn't be in a rank order as a general cookie cutter process, because if someone has the goal of selling, then we would be doing is laser focusing on what would make their firm most desirable for someone else to want to buy it, right? So if I was looking at your house, you may already have a gorgeous kitchen, but your curb appeal in your bedrooms are just horrible. How can we make that better? Or you don't have the kitchen and the bathrooms everybody wants. That's what we want to do. So we do law firms in the same way. We come in and we take a look at you specifically, your type of law, whether it be estate planning, family law, criminal defense, whatever, and say what would have the most impact for a buyer in your industry and the way you've created the firm so far. When we do that, not everybody is a good candidate for coaching, because some people are so ready to exit that they are like, I don't want to put in the work to create that better bathroom, right? Yeah. So then that puts them maybe on the second path, which is the sell.
All right, so I hope you're enjoying this episode. So if you're struggling to grow your family law firm right now and you've tried marketing and you've tried sales and nothing seems to be clicking, it's more than likely that you have a benchmark problem. You actually don't know what winning looks like and what the KPIs are that you need to manage to. So that is why we put together this benchmark report. So this report goes over a bunch of stuff. It tells you what should PPC leads cost? What should LSA leads cost? What should those leads close at? What should you be doing for social media? How should you structure your sales process? Who should do your intake? Should you do paid consults or free consults? All of these questions that are potentially holding you back from growth are answered in this short guide. Now, as a bonus, when you get this guide mailed to you, I also give you an intake script that you can give to an internal person or a call center. I also give you the agenda of how non-attorney salespeople open their call, and I give you the closing questions that they use to close more deals. So go ahead, get this for free. All you gotta do is put in your information and I will mail you a physical copy. Let's get back to the episode. Okay, so let me ask the big, important, expensive question, because there's so many myths out there about selling your law firm for this X revenue or, that times EBITDA or whatever. Is it possible to sell a law firm today? And specifically, is it possible to sell a firm like a family law firm? Because that's traditionally like our listeners who don't have reoccurring revenue. I guess most firms don't, but is it possible? Let's start there.
Absolutely. It is possible. We, in our business Quid Pro Quo, that is what we do every day is we find buyers for our law firms and those law firms are closing. So it is possible. We have sold family law firms as well. And so the answer to your question is yes. I think the other question is what makes it possible?
Yeah, that, and I would ask, if there's three categories of sale, there's like, well, you tell me, how do most sales go and how do most people want their sale to go? And would you say there's a big gap in there?
So the historic way sales went was that my mindset is that my firm's not worth anything because the firm is me, and without me, what are they buying? Right. Mm-hmm. And so historically, lawyers would just phase out their cases to where they didn't have any anymore, and then they would close their doors. A step beyond that is that they would say, well, I don't want to stay and phase out all my cases. Maybe I can hand them to a friend of mine, a colleague of mine, and they'll take care of them. And, they can get my phone number. And if I have a website, that as well. And so they can get any kind of calls that would still be coming to my number. Because just because we're not there anymore doesn't mean the phone number is not going to ring anymore. It is. Yep. And so somebody can intercept that. And so that would be generally a colleague or a friend. A step above that then is, well, maybe that colleague or friend can pay me a percentage of whatever they get, like a referral fee, except that in some states you can't call it a referral fee because that's not permissible. So it actually is a true sale that they do closing paperwork on, and they decide ahead of time what that is. And generally in a case like that, when you're selling a book of business and not an actual, business, is that you're, going to be offered between maybe 10 to 30% off of the income stream that comes from your prior clients, your telephone, your website, the ways that you got leads to begin with. And so then that would be paid out over a period of time. Generally speaking, 2 to 3 years is what I saw most often.
And so when you say 10 to 30%, 10 to 30% of what exactly? Case value? Okay, the gross
revenue that is brought in on each case. So, right.
Okay, so that would then be paid out for, let's say, hypothetically, 3 years, you get 10 to 30% of the money coming in every year.
Correct.
And then after that, it's done.
Most often there's an end date. Correct.
Okay. So essentially almost like you're just kind of taking the profits a little bit ish. Is that kind of how it feels to the seller?
Correct. So what it feels to them is, well, I wasn't going to get anything anyway. So at least now I get some sort of income stream over a period of time. Right.
Okay.
And I get something of value for what I put in all these years.
Yeah.
And so, that's better than nothing. Mm-hmm. And so that's what we still see a lot with solo practitioners that either have one assistant or no team at all. Mm-hmm. It's different. The landscape changes, though, once a law firm starts having employees. Then there's something a little more to buy. Not that you can buy a person, but you can buy a team, right? You can buy processes. If this team has written processes, even better. Now we're talking about, you mentioned EBITDA, which is often what businesses are valued at where there's a multiple of your EBITDA. When we're talking about services firms, especially smaller services firms, really what's used more accurately and more often is the seller's discretionary earnings, the SDE, instead of EBITDA. And so once you start going from solo practitioner over to small firm where there's a team, there's processes, there might be automatic marketing streams, and it's not so focused on just the owner, then we're talking about doing multiples of the SDE, which can make a big difference because a buyer is more willing to put money up front. A seller is more willing to do a seller's note. And so we often see a combination of those.
So for the dumber people on this call, can we define EBITDA, and then can you define SDE? What exactly are the differences there?
So we start off with, first of all, we have gross revenue, and that's all the money that comes into your firm from whatever source that's considered income. After that, we subtract all of our expenses and we get what's called net income. Okay. EBITDA adds back to your net income all of your interest, depreciation, amortization, and taxes that you've paid out of your law firm, out of your business, to where your net number is less. We add those back in.
Okay.
And so it's earnings before interest, depreciation, amortization, depreciation. Did I say that? So it adjusts the numbers.
Okay.
And then how that's different from seller's discretionary earnings is that seller's discretionary earnings includes all income and benefits that are directly personal to the owner, so that we see what actually goes in the owner's pocket, if not directly, then through benefits. And so that would be if they're taking a W-2 salary, but then that salary is adjusted based on what fair market value would be to replace them. Okay. So if I'm getting paid $100,000, but I have to hire another lawyer at $120 to replace me, that's a deficit of $20,000 now going in my seller's discretionary earnings. All right.
Okay.
But the other way around, if I'm paying myself $500,000 W-2 and it would only take $100,000 to replace me, then that's $400 positive going in my seller's discretionary earnings. Okay. So it's my W-2 salary first. Then it's the net at the bottom of your profit loss statement, because that's whatever's left over. Whether you distribute that to yourself or not, it's still part of your SDE. It's also anything that you run through the business, like your car, your health insurance, your retirement funds that are solely for you or your spouse or family members. It would include your children if they're on payroll, but they're not necessary to the business. So what we are typically used to call fringe benefits, that's all part of seller's discretionary earnings. So sometimes what small firms do and businesses do is they try to have a zero net profit, sometimes negative, so that they don't have to pay taxes, right? Well, when we add back in the taxes, the depreciation, the interest, let's say that bumps us up to $25,000. That's your EBITDA. So if we're going to do a multiple of, let's just assume it's three times $25,000 is a valuation of $75,000. Okay. However, if we're using seller's discretionary earnings, and let's say that's $300,000 after my salary, my profit, my all my fringe benefits, it's $300,000. And let's pretend that the multiple is the same as we use for EBITDA at 3. That's a $900,000 value.
Wow.
Very different.
Wow.
And, the thing, Elliot, is that many people I speak with, I mean, we are a smart community of lawyers, and we are great at what we do. But it is disturbing how many lawyers do not know the difference between gross revenue, net income, and then EBITDA and seller's discretionary earnings.
I mean, yeah, that was honestly just super eye-opening because I'm thinking to myself, well, yeah, you can kind of help yourself on taxes. And then if you ever do go sell, you got your STE. So very cool. Very, very helpful. So hopefully that clears up terms. It cleared up terms for me, honestly. You said that's like the small firm evolution. So first they wind down the firm. That's option one. Then they kind of sell the little bit of flow that they have essentially for 10 to 30%. Now we're into this world of they have EBITDA or SDE and they're getting a multiple. What's the next evolution of sale, or is that kind of it? Like we've talked about three, I guess.
So, what is common for the smaller firms that have 2, 3, 4 lawyers is that they are still being bought out like businesses. They are getting the higher multiples from SDE, generally speaking. And when I say higher multiples, I'm talking probably between 2 and 4
Okay.
times. And there's generally a larger cash down payment. Or 100% because a buyer is using an SBA loan or a different type of financing. But we have sold several firms at 100% at closing. When the firm is solid, they've got the team, it's not dependent on the owner, and they've got a good profit margin. And when I say good profit margin, I mean north of 30%. Okay. So those are the ones that are getting cash up front, sometimes 100%. The lower the profit margin, the slimmer the team, the longer the payout is, and generally the more the owner is holding as a note. Where it gets trickier is if the buyer wants the owner to have an arrangement that's more like an earnout, where the buyer's only paying if there's certain revenue streams that are maintained. So key performance indicators are defined, and a true earnout requires the prior owner to stay involved to hit those metrics. I'm seeing non-true earnouts, but payment based on revenue stream, where the prior owner doesn't really have any way to affect that. And that's very
scary
for a prior owner, right? So, but that's where we start hearing discussions. Now we're starting to see for firms that are 5 million or more that have EBITDA or SDE at 1 million plus. We're starting to see private equity come in under the managed service organization model, MSOs. And so we're starting to see that. And I think we're going to see a lot more of that. And when we see more of that, your smaller firms that private equity does not want to get into are going to start using that same model for lawyers who are not in the same state as the law firm they want to buy. But yet it's a great model and can be scaled down for the smaller firms. It's just other lawyers doing that same model versus private equity doing that same model. So I anticipate in the next 2 to 3 years, that's what we're going to see the majority of. It still will not affect solo practitioners much. I think that their model is going to continue to be the same. So
in the example there, you have, I guess that was the last evolution there, is the kind of the MSO model. In the 5 million, let's say, firm that you kind of mentioned, and above, let's say up to 10, 15 million, right? And I'm kind of asking for clients, non-clients in family law arena. What are the multiples that you're seeing, and what is possible in that arena? And then obviously I want to get into how do we actually get those multiples. But what do you typically see in that range for a firm?
Yeah. So in the $10 million range, I am seeing multiples of approximately 3 to 5 times SDE. However, this model is different because generally speaking, the private equity is not buying the entire firm. They are buying a percentage. And so the seller is getting a cash infusion in the beginning. And then they do help participate in what all private equity does, and that is get other firms and roll them up into one and then sell 5 to 7 years later for a greater multiple. And that original seller gets a second bite at that apple, right? And so they get another payout then based on the value of the whole versus just the value of their own. And so while the multiples might be higher, they might not be, but that second payout is really can be desirable for a seller if they've got the patience to wait, and they don't need all the cash up front now.
So do you typically see above 5 million, then MSOs are the only ones playing in that game for the most part?
No, that's not true. There's some other larger law firms that are still buying. I mean, you've got $10 million law firms, you got 15 million, you got $100 million law firms. A $5 million law firm to any of those is still desirable as long as the profit margin is there and it's sustainable.
Gotcha. So yeah. So at the 5 million range, you have, obviously you could sell to other law firms, you could sell to MSOs. Any other buyers out there that you're seeing, and or like any other routes to, pretty much sell?
Well, sure. I mean, even at the $5 million level, many of those have associate attorneys or non-equity partners or minority equity partners, and they make for a great first opportunity to be the buyers of the firm. So I am still seeing a lot of associates doing that, buying up.
Okay. So let's say that we're going to play a little game here. You get to engineer the perfect firm with exit in mind. And then I want to ask you like how to structure everything, right? What are some of like the things that you would do to build a firm? What level would you probably try and exit at if you're trying to pretty much have a sizable exit to where you could technically retire?
Mm-hmm. So if it were me, I would want to build a firm that, first of all, would have at least 4 other lawyers. With those lawyers, I would want to have paralegal staff that bills. And I would be highly operative using AI systems so that everything is coordinated and streamlined for the maximum profit. Our people would be providing the legal advice, of course, the lawyers, paralegals, and also just the highest level customer service possible. And I think that's where, you didn't ask me this question, but I think that's where many of these firms that are jumping on the AI bandwagon misinterpret what we should be doing as businesses. And that is they're streamlining, they're becoming profitable, but they're forgetting the element of humanality. And we still want that unreasonable hospitality. We still want that, human connection to make sure that everything is going well for us as a client. So I would make sure we have that. Then I would, in every single firm, to include family law firms, I would have a client maintenance program. I would have recurring revenue after the case is over. I would start looking at my business, especially my clients, as what is my lifetime value of this client, not as what my average case value of this client. So beyond that, the last thing is I would make sure that I had a marketing system that created at least 3 different revenue streams for us that isn't dependent on me or my branding. I would be branding the law firm, branding my team, not me as the owner. So I would want to, everybody has their own different personal needs and goals as far as what retirement looks like. But for me, mine is $10 million. So that's my goal.
So let's say that you needed to get to 10 million. You wanted an exit of 10 million where there's not a lot of hair on that deal. What would the revenue level need to be to actually achieve that level of exit?
If I'm being purchased by private equity, I think my revenue level would need to be about 8 million. My SDE would need to be probably 2 to 3 million.
So you're looking at 2 to 3 million profit
Mhm.
So let's get into the reasons why then, because I think that is a common thing I hear people say. If I'm making 2 million profit per year and
Right.
I'm kind of out of the business, why not just write it out? Like, why do people sell? What are the reasons you see people sell, and what's a good reason to and not to?
So for lawyers, our businesses are inherently different than other businesses in that we have malpractice liability. Whether we are on the beach somewhere and letting our team take care of everything, we are still the one liable when they mess up, when they shove, that order in a desk and don't comply with deadlines, when they shove that deed in the desk and don't ever get it filed and someone dies and it's never been recorded by the court. So the overhanging liability with people that you're not day to day watching and managing anymore can be too much for some people. When they retire, they just want to retire. They don't want anything to do with it
Interesting.
anymore from a mental standpoint. That is a shift. It's like a switch that goes on. You just don't want that. But if you are willing to be CEO and still keep your thumb on the pulse of the business, where you get CEO reports at least weekly on the number of new cases, the number of cases we've closed, the gross revenue, the net revenue, what is our profit margin, and what is our labor cost, then I think you can still stay in it and get a great income. And those are the kind of ways people need to think about it, is what benefit is it getting me staying in? What benefit does it get me out of other than financial? Because these are not financial decisions, really. They are liability, they're quality of life. They are sometimes financial if you need the finances, but that should be the last consideration. Because why are you considering exiting to begin with? That should be the first question. I was so frustrated. I am still frustrated that I have a client that, we've done everything to find them a buyer. We found them a buyer. They've got given an offer, which is great. And then there's an uptick in the revenue. Oh, we're doing great. We've been doing great for 3 months now, better than we ever did. So I'm just going to stay for another 6 months. Well, is that why you were leaving to begin with? Is because your revenue sucked? And now it's doing better. So all of a sudden you have life breathed into you. We don't make exit decisions based on how we've done in one quarter.
Yep.
And so I would say that it is a question I get a lot as far as, well, why don't I just stay and keep the income stream? But more often than not, what I hear is, I don't want the liability. I'm out.
Interesting. That's interesting. So what about the people who are in pain and they're like, I got 2 years left in me.
Mhm.
Is that a smart way to approach it? What would you tell those people?
That's exactly when they should be looking to position themselves on the market and sell. Because if you wait until the end of the 2 years, now you don't have any energy to put into it. You will give away your firm when you
Mhm.
shouldn't. And between that first thought of, I have 2 years, to the actual 2 years, first of all, it happens way faster than you think it's going to. And second, you see an end date. And so you start making different decisions for your firm than you would have otherwise. And then that can devalue your firm. And you see the 30 years you've spent building it. You don't see the 2 years you've spent um, basically driving it into the ground. And so it's harder then emotionally to get over the fact that I need to exit and I want this money,
Yeah.
but this is what you've done in the last 2 years. You sabotaged it. So I would
Yep.
say once you start thinking that, whether it's 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, that's when you say, what do I need to do to have the best exit, the smoothest exit for me?
So in your mind, should everybody be kind of prepping for an exit? Because one way or another, we're all going to exit. Either we're going to die and somebody's going to own it, or is this something that somebody should be doing all the time? Or is it more so like, when would you say that somebody should engage and start to learn how to optimize their business for sale, whether they sell it or not?
Well, so Dr. Stephen Covey says, begin with the end in mind, right? So that's from the beginning. I think that that's a smart philosophy. I think the second thing I would say, especially having been an estate planning attorney for 18 years, and I still own another law firm that does estate planning for veterans, is people become disabled. People die.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know when that's going to happen, and we don't know if that's going to happen to us. I do know that when we're young, those kind of things always happen to someone else. It's never going to happen to us. And yet it does happen to someone, and you can be that someone. So with that being the backdrop, I think every day is an opportunity to do the best we can for those that follow. When people tell me, oh, I care about my staff and I care about my clients. Well, do you really? If you're not putting an exit plan in place, do you? Because how do you think it's going to go if you just up and die and they don't have any instructions? They don't have a path forward. They can't access your bank accounts to pay bills or any of the things they need to do to wind down this business, much less try to sell it after you've died. So I'd say really look in the mirror and say, do I care about the things I think I care about, or at least I say I care about? Because if I do, I would take different actions. I would make different decisions. So when you approach it from that, then it is an everyday decision to make this firm better for when I'm not here. Every day is an exit opportunity.
I'm over here taking notes at the same time. So let me ask you, let's say that I make this decision. What are the areas of the business that you optimize? Like, what are some big key areas, like 3 big key areas that you step into a firm and it's always these 3? It's like, playbook number 1, playbook number 2. What are those common ones that you see?
Profit. Number 1. Number 2 would be systems. And then number 3 would be, and this is going to sound soft, but really it's the culture. If you're not a solo, then you have a culture. And what is that? Because people want to buy a good fit after they see that the finances are going to work.
Okay, so they kind of see yes or no finance. Okay, cool. Yes or no key man risk, I guess, is systems. Mm-hmm. Check. And then yes or no, we want this team. Right. That's kind of how a buy. Okay, interesting. So when you go in and you see profit, is it like they're not making money at all, or is it like it's 10% is not good enough? What do you do for that firm? Like, what is your go-to?
Yeah. So we look and see, first of all, where are you wasting money? Like, what are you spending on things you shouldn't, because you either have 3 of the same exact types of programs that provide the same thing, and let's use an example. ChatGPT and Claude. Those are 2 things that people are like, oh, I don't know which one I should use. So I have both of them. Make a decision, cut one, right? Break up with the old girlfriend, stay with the new, something. There's sometimes we have programs that we've had forever that we're just not using anymore, but yet we just haven't stopped that subscription. That's why subscriptions are so good, is because people just get used to it coming out of their accounts and they're not even using them anymore, right? So we look for waste like that first. Then we look for where are the leaky buckets of opportunity. And so the very first thing I would look at is your front line, your intake system. There's no point spending 10% on marketing if your front line drops the ball every single time you throw it to them. Every single time you throw it to them. So what does your front line look like? Is it solid? There is no point in having a marketing or production if front line isn't doing their job. That would be number 1 for me. Once we stop looking at what you're spending erroneously. So that would be where I would look next. And then 3rd is always labor cost. And are we utilizing our team to the maximum? Oh, but they're busy. Well, do you chart their time? Well, no, we're flat fee. Well, so that tells me what you get from your clients. It doesn't tell me what your staff does for you, and if you're charging appropriately based on the amount of time y'all spend. If I have 3 different paralegals and we have one type of motion that we regularly file, and one is taking 3 hours and the other 2 are taking 30 minutes, why are we still letting this one take 3 hours? That's the kind of digging that law firm owners need to look into versus, well, I like them, they're happy, they show up, we have a good culture, and everyone's busy. That doesn't mean anything to me.
So let me ask you a really tactical question, and then we'll move on to your second bucket there. Mm-hmm. If somebody has 4 attorneys, let's say, and they all have a KPI of 120 hours a month, for example, how do you go in there and do that? Do you sit there and watch them work? Do you do a time study? What is like your go-to to evaluate how your people are working and what they return to you?
For starters, I would look at whatever system we're using to chart their time. So, for example, if I've got Clio Grow, I've got, they're supposed to be entering their time, right? Same with Action Step or any of these others, QuickBooks even. So I would start there, and I would just pull an average of the last 10 cases these people have worked on, just 10 cases. And I did this in my firm. I've done it with coaching clients, is just send me, the data from your average 10 just spot check 10 cases, right? Yeah. I don't want you to pick because you think it was a good one or anything like that. Just go get me 10 cases of this kind. Now what we're going to do is we're going to break down how many attorney hours, how many paralegal hours, how many admin hours, how many owner hours, right? And so then we see, okay, who's spending, what type of professional within the firm is spending the most on these? Is that how it should be, right? It should be paralegals probably, or heavier than anybody else in that. If it's lawyers, why? Are they doing things that paralegals could be doing? Because, we have such big egos that, this takes a lawyer. This takes a lawyer, when in fact, it doesn't actually take a lawyer, right, to do certain things. So can we shove down as much as possible? Same with paralegals. Are they doing admin stuff? Shove it down. And then I look at how much time is it taking each of these type of people to do the same type of task? And do we have anyone who's actually not being productive? So that's how I would analyze it first.
Interesting. So what if an attorney says, well, if I do this, we bill higher, we make more money? Because I had that comment the other day. Is this unethical other than that?
Well, first of all, I would say, is that right for the client?
Yeah.
Right. Because I'm always client-centered. So is that right for the client? And is it something a paralegal could do? Then I would try to have a conversation with that attorney and say, what are the other things you do that only you can do that can bring higher value, that if you weren't doing this, you could do more of that? How can we get more of that on your calendar? Because I don't want to get you out of a job. I want to make sure that we're maximizing your skill set and only what your unique factor can be. They have a scarcity mindset. I want to keep it all to myself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They don't have a leadership or a development mindset, which owners have to have.
Yep.
And I'd like to believe that owners are passing that along to their associates, who then pass that along to the paralegals, who then it just keeps trickling. But I would definitely have a mindset conversation with that person, as well as a dollars and cents conversation.
Nice. So everyone says the word systems. That was your second bucket. What does that mean actually? Like that a buyer would say, oh, you guys have systems.
Right. So there's 2 things. One is, what do we use? What are the platforms we use to get the workflow through, right? So for example, I mentioned Clio earlier. In my business, we have Clio Grow, which is our intake system, right? Mm-hmm. Until someone hires us. Then we have Clio Manage, which is our CRM. So we manage the case flow, right? Those are systems. I have a marketing system on Kajabi. Mm-hmm. I have, a financial system on QuickBooks.
Okay.
Then you have the written procedures, the standard operating procedures. How do I use these things? When do I do these things? Unless those platforms are automated, which is what a lot of your IA can do now, unless they're automated, you have to have people who are doing tasks, and those tasks should be in writing, in procedures. So that way, if I do the task and you do the task, we're doing them the same way. So it's consistent, and our clients have a consistent experience with us. I know when to do it. You know when to do it. I'm doing it this way. You're doing it this way. Those are written procedures versus knowledge in our head. Now, you asked me, what is a buyer looking at when I say systems? Well, you and I might do it exactly the same way, but mine's in writing and yours isn't. Mine's more valuable than yours, even though we do it exactly the same. We're both just as good, but mine's more valuable because when I die tomorrow, the buyer can just plug and play a new me. You die tomorrow, all that knowledge has died with you.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as a buyer, I've got to train a new you. I don't want to train a new you. I want to hand them a book that trains them. Right?
Gotcha. Yep. So the last bucket was culture. Does the buyer come into the firm and hang out and feel the vibe? How do they define that? Like, what do they do?
So some of them would do that, but we can start off with defining culture way before we ever even meet in person. And the best example I have, I think for starters, is I had a firm that was female owned, had 2 female part-time attorneys, litigation firm. And the owner had left what she called traditional firm, where you had to have a certain number of billable hours per month. You had to serve on certain nonprofits, like it was required, boards of things, and all the things. And she said, when I set up my firm, I don't want a mandatory minimum hourly. I want to know what you can do, and then I'll pay you accordingly, right? So you, as the associate, get to define what your capacity is, and I'll pay you fairly for that. But I'm not going to require anything. I'm not going to require you to be on boards, but it helps the firm and it helps you. And so that's a big difference in culture, right? Just on that one small example.
Mm-hmm.
And so then when she was selling to a person, we were looking for someone who wasn't traditional. And so we wanted someone who could appreciate that lifestyles are different. And as long as they're producing what the KPIs are for them, then they were meeting goal, right? But you have to have a way to monitor those KPIs, and things like that. But that's an example of culture. Let me see if I can have another example. Another great example of culture would be, we're extremely AI driven in our firm. Well, we are extremely not. We still have paper files, and I have a whole storage unit down there with them, and we go get them when someone calls us from 10 years ago. That's a big difference in culture.
Okay, so it would be defined as like the way that you do business, essentially, and that has a clear, you can see with your eyes, like, okay, they do it this way, you do it this way, but you still get the outcomes and the KPIs that a buyer would look for.
Yeah, I would say it's the way you do business and the way you treat your people and the way you lead. So, for example, you might have a culture of, well, we have staff meetings with our team leads every Wednesday, and we go over whatever we need to for team leads. We also have case status, meetings every week or every other week, blah, blah. Whereas this firm over here might say, everybody's an adult. I trust them to take care of their own cases, and we're just going to do that. So if I bought that firm and I'm the one who does team meetings regularly, and I bought one that isn't, if I start implementing team meetings, everybody would be like, oh, you don't trust me.
Interesting.
I'm out of here. I'm out of here. So it's also how you treat your team and how you lead.
Interesting. So from a risk standpoint, if I like things, I'm a buyer and I like things this way, and I go into a firm that does not like things that, it's going to be immediate friction. I'll probably lose half the value I just bought. Possibly. I got you. So that's why they would do it. Very interesting. So 2 more questions, because I can ask Victoria questions all day, by the way. Question number 2 is, can you define really quick the MSO model? What is that everyone's talking about? How does it work?
Sure. So the MSO model is where, let's just assume that the person or business who wants to buy the law firm is either not a lawyer in the state where they want to buy the law firm, or they're just not a lawyer at all. And prior to the MSO model becoming a thing and popular, we had the ABS model in Arizona and Utah, which is the alternative business structure, where you had to go through the court system and the bar system to apply to own a law firm as a non-lawyer. I actually own one of those in Arizona right now. So I know what that system's like, okay? And it takes a very long time, and you have to have court approval. You have to have the bar approval. You have to have a local lawyer who is your accountability lawyer. And then you have to supply, reports. It's either quarterly or semi-annually or something. And so it's highly monitored, regulated, hard to get in. The MSO model is different. It is not any of those things. I'm not going to say it's easy. It is extremely complicated from a structure standpoint. So what it is you need to have, number one, a law firm still, but then the non-lawyer person, entity, whomever, has a separate business. And let's just call it an LLC, just for simplicity. So the law firm still has to exist, and that's owned by a lawyer in the state where the law firm exists. Then you've got the MSO that is not owned by a lawyer. The people who own the MSO has paid the prior lawyer who owned the law firm money for the opportunity for this arrangement. So let's say your firm is worth $1 million. The private equity comes in, and let's just keep it simple. They pay you $1 million. Okay. Now we have to have somebody who's still willing to be the lawyer owner of the law firm. Then the MSO owns the MSO. So then it becomes a division of duties. Who's responsible for what? The law firm employs lawyers. They have lawyers who work for them. The law firm still receives all the revenue from the clients and pays the lawyers. Essentially, the MSO then owns and takes responsibility for the marketing, the intake, the sales potentially, the back-end production, like all the paralegal work, the admin work, post-production, bookkeeping, HR, hiring, firing, all of that, okay? So then how it works in simplistic forms is the clients pay the law firm pays the MSO for management and some profit. And then the lawyers are getting paid. They keep their money, whatever they're getting paid as lawyers in the law firm. That's as simple as I can try to make it sound, but it is very complicated from a paperwork standpoint when you're setting up.
No, that was very helpful. And then I'm assuming the liability stays with the lawyer who owns the law firm, and that's one of the big things.
Correct. I mean, the lawyer's the one providing the legal advice.
Yeah, so they got to really trust the MSO that's coming in to buy them, unless they just want a payday.
Correct. And so, so it's very important that we still point out, of course, that the MSO cannot direct the advice that the lawyers give. The MSO cannot direct what the lawyers are going to charge or the services that they're offering, right?
Yeah.
When it's set up, the MSO from the beginning says, this is what we need from a financial basis to manage the law firm and to provide all these other services that we're going to provide to you so that you can do a bang up job providing just the legal services.
Clean-ish. Yeah. No.
Well, I mean, so many people are against it because they are like, first of all, again, there's that confusion as to what is legal advice and what is legally required, necessary and what's not, what has to happen from a lawyer and what doesn't. But if you just break it down to why do people stay solo? They don't like to manage people.
Yep.
They don't want to do marketing, but they're happy to get referrals from church or, the clubs they're in and stuff like that. Bookkeeping they do on their own on Sundays. If lawyers could just be lawyers and not do all that stuff that keeps them from owning businesses, real businesses, because now we have someone who actually does the business side of it,
Yeah.
It's a marriage made in heaven, in my opinion. Lawyers can just be lawyers, and business people can be business people.
Yeah.
And
And
we
the
can
few
serve
that
more
emerge,
people.
yeah. The few that emerge to be business owners can do whatever they want, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It's very interesting. It'll be interesting to see how it all plays out. But I know a lot of people hate the idea, at least
Mhm.
what I've seen. So my last question for you, so I want to be mindful of your time, right, is what questions, did I not ask, or what advice do you have for the listeners? Primarily family law firm owners.
Mhm.
Some of them want to sell. Some of them haven't even thought about it. What should they know? Like if this was a movie and they were the person, what would you be screaming at them? Like,
Yeah.
do this.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you want to sell, then I would say being a solo is just not your path. You've got to grow, number one. And so, if you're going to grow, then you want to grow the right ways. Okay. So, you have to start looking at yourself in that we have micro exits. There's the ultimate exit when I'm not part of this firm anymore. But short of that, what will it take for me to get there? So I've got to exit my role of doing admin and answering my own phone and looking at my own email and scheduling my own calls. I've got to exit doing the consultations and the sales meetings. I've got to exit putting together the pleadings and stuff like that. I've got to exit going to court because I can't control my own schedule when I go to court, right? So where are all the little places I can exit? And how do I replace myself? Do I replace myself with AI? Do I replace myself with a person? If it's a person, is it a lawyer, paralegal, admin, right? So start thinking strategically about I have a business that I want to exit and sell versus I'm a lawyer who's practicing law. That's number one, right? We've got to make that shift in our head. And from there, I would, even just a 4-person business can sell for great profits. If you've got the core 4, what I call the core 4, you've got to have someone bringing in the clients. You got to have somebody who does the work. You've got to have, now I'm going to lose all the core 4, but anyway, so front facing marketing, in sales, production. And so you've got to have that. And then ultimately, I would say for family law specific, stop doing one-offs. Figure out what you are great at, what the consumers want you for, and really focus on that. So for example, I'm a family law firm. I do divorces and custody, but we'll do an adoption here or there. Stop doing the adoption here or there. Just refer that out to somebody, right? Or, we don't really like litigation, but we'll do it once in a while. Well, what happens when you do it once in a while? Well, we get this huge payday. At what expense? What have you sacrificed to do that one? Kind of stuff. So really look at what are you great at? What's the market want you for? And shut everything else out. And then lastly, I would say have a client maintenance program. Have a client maintenance program, especially in family law. And many family law attorneys are like, well, I don't think that suits my firm. How does it not? I mean, how many ways can you enhance this person's life through other resources, articles, the things that make communicating with their ex-spouse better, having a better relationship with their children after divorce, how to save for college now that there's one of you instead of 2 of you. I mean, that's 3 things right there. I could have a seminar, I could have a community meeting, I could do blogs about that people are willing to pay me to stay in their life so that their life is better.
Yeah.
How can we not have a client maintenance program?
And they do, I think, without even realizing it, because they come back for modifications and they come back for, so it's like, make it official and they'll definitely come to you.
Right. And so I learned a long time ago from my mentor, because I was bad at this. He's like, look, Victoria, you're creating this huge herd, except you haven't put any fences around them. And so they're wandering out there with all the other lawyers, and they're like, what?
Very good
You
example.
find them in other people's pastures. Put a fence around them. That client maintenance program is your fence.
That's a very good example. So I lied. Last question. If somebody wants to get an evaluation or somebody wants to talk to you or like demystify this thing even more than we hopefully have already done today, how do they get a hold of you? What do they do?
So first of all, I I walk the walk. I do what we preach, and that is you would contact quidproquolaw.com, and you will let us know that you're interested in a valuation or whatever you've heard here today. And you will talk to my sales representative, Jordan, and he will help you decide whether what we offer is something that can benefit you. And if so, then you will go forward with that. And then I will meet you on the backside.
Nice.
So, yeah.
And he will try and sell you something because that's his right. So excellent. So that is how you get a hold of Victoria, which I think this was awesome. Thank you, Victoria, for all the knowledge. I learned a lot in this conversation, which is the mark of a good conversation, right? So really, really thank you for your time, and we will see all of you on the next episode.
Thank you, Elliot.